to talk about Clemson football and where it is, especially with the 2021 recruiting class, because Dabo Swinney might have thought that we forgot, but we did not. Ken Babb, works at the Washington Post, wrote a great feature about what is going on at Clemson, what Dabo is doing, what his former players expect from him, and what future players and their parents, more importantly, expect from him. And Tammy Trotter, who is the mom of Jeremiah Trotter Jr., whose father is Jeremiah Trotter, who was a Pro Bowler and absolute hammer at middle linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day, has had some things to say about Dabo and Clemson. And I want to start with this. She believes what I believe, which is that he's a good man, but he is missed. He's missed on so much of this stuff that he thought he knew that he does not. So the first quote that I thought was interesting here is, if Dabo is the face of down there, people are looking at him, and how he changes can affect how they possibly change. Listen, Dabo got the side eye from this mama. Right now, it's about going with your gut and feeling like, can I forgive this? Which really cuts to it. There are absolute realities and truths in Black America that so many white Americans are learning about, still getting used to. And how a person of Dabo's means speaks about those things with the influence that he has is really, really wide-reaching and tremendously powerful. And I've said as much, and I will continue to say as much for a number of reasons. The first of which is that man makes $93 million over 10 years to coach football. Okay? He makes $9 million a year to coach football. He's also had a tremendous hand in a booming economy for a town of Clemson that has just over 17,000 year-round residents. 17,000, that's it. That's fewer than the entire student body at the University of Oklahoma. Okay? It is very much an economy that has built itself on football. Dabo has made so much money that he deferred his 2012 salary so that he could increase the salary for the pool for his assistants to $4.2 million at the time. Now it's $8 million. It is the best paid staff in all of college football because Dabo has three things at the top of his list. The first one is his faith. The second one is Clemson and football. And the third one is extreme loyalty. He will be extremely loyal to the folks who choose to play for him and work for him, which is another reason why I think he's taking so many calls from so many folks on these issues of Black Lives Matter. In 2012, he was paid $2 million when they were asked about, giving that money back or putting it back into the pool of deferring payment. He said, look, I made plenty of money, right? I thought that was interesting to note. I also thought it was interesting to note that Clemson had gone 8 years without a decommitment, and they've had two in the 2021 class. Corey Foreman in April, Jordan Hancock just a couple of weeks ago. Now, back to Tammy Trotter, who said another great quote here. When I send my son out the door, I have to worry about this big black young man with this big, thick head of hair that somebody is not looking at him as a threat. No matter how gentle he is, I have to worry. Which is how so many black mamas and fathers feel. They understand that many see their children as fully grown adults. They understand that many see their children as capable of hurting them. They do not see a knucklehead. They do not see a dude that still learned how to parallel park, came back out, who is still has to be told, make your bed, to eat his vegetables, to take the trash out. And that goes for nearly every FBS football player on scholarship. They are all 6 feet to 6'7", 6'8", between 200 and 300 pounds. Noah Nelson is a true freshman at Oklahoma. He's 6'8", 320. Child's 18. I can only imagine how it must feel for some of these children who were looked at as adults and treated like adults based on their physical prowess. At the barbershop, and a kid walks in about 6'1", might be 210. He's still growing. His mama's behind him. She's diminutive. And immediately, folks in the barbershop start talking about this fully grown adult and making fun of whether or not he should have to, or his mother should have to pay for a kid's cut or an adult cut. To which I'm saying, let that child be a child. He is physically overdeveloped. He is still maturing as an individual and as an adult. Jeremiah Trotter's mama, Tammy, gets that. Another thing she said, I want you to look at my child as if you and your wife had birthed this person. She said this to Dabo. If I'm hours away from you, I want to feel in my heart that he's in a place where the people that I left him with will protect him. Remember that this woman is married to one of the most formidable middle linebackers to play the game. Jeremiah Trotter was a hammer. The man stood over the middle of offensive guards and offensive centers and lived to tune them up. All 250 plus pounds of him, throwing his forearm right into their neck. And her son, at least according to ESPN, is number one ranked outside linebacker in the country. I get where she's coming from. I also understand that Dabo Swinney is doing some work. He's had some black coaches that he trusts get into his grill and force him to understand. And after saying what he said about Black Lives Matter and missing the point totally, for which I eviscerated him and I would still do it today, he has since talked to CJ Spiller, one of the first big-time recruits that he ever landed, about where they are and what they are doing. He's talked to other coaches like Will McCorvey about what he's doing and how that all resonates. They've had strenuous discussions about what Swinney can do and what he's willing to do. To which he said this in front of a crowd at what is still called Tillman Hall. This is a man that, Benjamin Tillman, who once wanted black men lynched for touching white women, among other things. They still got that man's name on a building. I don't understand why. Swinney said, I'm embarrassed to say there's things on this campus that I didn't really understand. I knew the basics, but not the details, but I've learned and I've listened. And to his credit, many people will say he's listening to me. He hasn't had anything to say publicly. And in keeping with that loyalty and that family, they kept that conversation between he and others private, which I understand. But you can't keep it private for very long. Not as we are hard charging to a college football season that is in doubt, where many of your players are the most vulnerable populations in the entire country. In a country that is now lagging behind the rest of the world in how it is fighting the spread of this virus. All while it is fighting the continued spread of racism. Swinney has put together one of the marvels of college football. He went from being a wide receiver coach to a head coach. Never was a coordinator. That we forget that. He was never a coordinator. And he decided to will the Clemson that he saw in his mind into existence. This is a man who wrote down on napkins and on paper what he wanted for this program. A man who has seen 53 players go into the NFL since he took over the program. It's a man that's overseen not just the $8 million paid to his assistant coach, has been able to keep Brent Venables for 8 years, but who has seen the ribbon cutting of a $55 million football operations complex and $70 million upgrades to Memorial Stadium, where the real Death Valley is. It's a man who wrote down, this is what I want to see, who was in meetings with the Board of Regents talking about what their program should look like. He sketched it. He shared ideas for university infrastructure. He envisioned what they have now, and it's led to 2 national championships in the last 4 years at Clemson. New money. I submit to you, this is like Central Florida being the ACC. If Central Florida's in the ACC and they had this kind of success, he is the change agent. He is everything that university and its program is. He is their shining light. It also speaks to if he can put together a vision that nobody else saw, that he had no business believing in, that can lead to the kind of success they have had. If he wanted to turn that death of a salesman attitude, that Willie Loman streak of his, where he was a salesman for a full year, into being a change agent for social justice, for helping his players and their families in this fight against police brutality, while winning championships, there would be no greater champion in college football. There would be none. He's better salesman than Nick Saban. At the very most, Nick Saban gets to sell Alabama, right? Which is to sell Bear Bryant, which is to sell tradition and tradition, which is to sell Gene Stallings. Dabo had an orange tiger paw and a place that many people still don't know where it is, in South Carolina, which is by far one of the most racist states in our union historically. It is the first one to secede. It is the place where the first shot was fired in the Civil War. They stood for America's original sin, slavery, where many of his players would be slaves now had the Confederacy won. This matters. His voice matters, just as I've said to many of you. And now that Jeremiah Trotter's mama Tammy is putting him on the spot, I want to see how this is going to go. Because my fear is, as this coronavirus continues to decimate all, that so many of the steps forward that many claim to have taken will be swept under the rug. People will forget about them. We're not actually going to try to be more inclusive. We just said it because we didn't want to get caught up in the wash. We're not actually going to hire more minorities and women because, jobs are tight, money's tight. We don't have it to go and try to figure out who the most capable applicants among that population are. I'm scared of that, man, because we do it over and over again. I've called it a Black Lives Matter moment because a movement is not it, not yet. The civil rights movement began post-World War II, and for many people peaked in 1965 with the Voting Rights Act. And it has been steadily declining. We went from affirmative action to its getting it off the books. No, we're good. Because a woman in Texas believed that she was being unfairly culled out of the recruiting process. We saw the Voting Rights Act gutted in 2013, and we see people that claim to want to stand for what John Lewis did. A man that got his skull cracked open on a bridge in Selma while he had his hands in his pockets. These are all things that I want Dabo to know. These are all things that I want you to know. These things matter. Black lives matter.